One morning, when I open my phone, you see a notification from an unknown account. The message says, "You haven't noticed, have you? Look around you. You've seen this face before, but you don't know where. You've forgotten us, but we haven't forgotten you." I don't understand what's going on. I keep thinking, but I end up believing it's just a simple phishing scam. I block the user, thinking it's fake. But everything I thought was wrong because 10 minutes later, I get another message. "Why did you block me? Are you scared? What's going on? I just want to help you." This is all I know. If you can figure out what it means, let me know. Day 2. All of his accounts are blocked. I don't know if it's just paranoia, but I always see my family on social media. It's very weird. Say me if it only paranoia, I start to be scared. I will talk with him and say what info I'll got. Note, he probably says the truth, I'll trust him. It can't be a scam.
I was house sitting for some friends, and they rent out part of their upstairs room for a cheap price to the local college students. I used to rent from them, and when I moved out, I moved down the street, so I was an easy contact for pet care or house sitting while they were on trips. Needless to say, I knew the place well and was super comfortable taking care of it. Well, the first night I was around, I was cooking dinner and I heard something fall down the stairs to the upper bedroom. It sounded like a box full of books, like it was loud. The upper bedroom stairwell is closed off by a door, and I wasn't sure if the current tenant was around, so I knocked and asked if they were okay. I didn't get a response, so I yelled I was coming up to check on them. I opened the door, and the stairwell was empty. No box, no nothing. Went upstairs, and there was no tenant, and there wasn't anything I could see that was out of place. I was confused, but summed it up as just something my mind made up. A couple nights later, I was getting ready for bed. I was staying in the downstairs guest bedroom, and there's a light that's on a slider that will dim when someone adjusts it. There was also a sliding door I had closed to the bedroom. All this will come into play in a sec. Well, I was in bed and had the light all the way on when I heard footsteps upstairs. It was a heel-to-toe kind of sound, and it was making a figure 8 pattern in the bedroom upstairs. It was still decently early, maybe around 8 or so, and I texted the tenant to let her know I was downstairs and to let me know if I'm making too much noise to just shoot me a text. It was maybe an hour later, and I heard the footsteps again before receiving a reply from her. She said she was in the process of moving out and was actually out of town for 2 weeks, so not currently home. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and after a few beats, the sliding light in the bedroom slowly dimmed to off. I had about a second or two of silence before the sliding door to the bedroom rang out with a huge bang and started swaying on the sliding pole it was on. It looked like a person had punched it from the other side. Of course, when I opened it, there was no one around. Geez. I gathered my things and left the house. Still did all the chores throughout the week and took care of things around the home, but did not stay in that house after that. I didn't have anything spooky like that happen to me while I was renting the upstairs, but notably, there was an attic door that liked to open up in the middle of the night. I always thought it was just an old house, so stuff like that happens, but after this experience, I'm not so sure. I got to work this morning and began unloading and loading cargo into the back of my truck. It's very dark in my workspace, so much so that I have to wear a headlamp to read labels in the loading area. Because the lights are not very bright in my workspace, it gets bright during the day, and it's very silent, and I'm the only person who starts here at 4 a.m. This morning at roughly 4:15, I stopped loading my cargo to send my boss a quick text message, and something literally loudly hissed in my ear, and I actually felt warm air on my neck. I freaked out and probably looked ridiculous if the security cameras caught it because I was backing up quickly and spinning in circles trying to see whatever it was. I flinched so hard that I gave myself slight whiplash. Then I immediately ran outside to my car and waited for my coworker to come in about an hour later so I wouldn't be alone, and debated leaving work. I am on my lunch break now posting this. When my coworker saw me outside when he arrived, I just told him I'm sick and needed to come outside for a few minutes. I am totally freaked out and don't want to come back in for work tomorrow. I've been in that area at 4 a.m. over 1,000 times, so I'm very used to the norm. This was the first experience like this I've had.
I was about 10 years old when me and my friend went to say hello to his mom, who was working as a barmaid in one of the local pubs. The pub was built in 1461, so it has a good amount of history. After saying hello to his mom, we went to leave and noticed the cellar door was open. Being curious 10-year-olds and out of earshot of any adults, we decided to sneak down and have a cheeky look around. When we got down there, it was kind of how you would expect, just loads of barrels of booze and storage for other bits and pieces. But suddenly, we hear this, "Excuse me," from behind us. We spin around, and there is a lady in the cellar. She says to us, "You shouldn't be down here, and we should go back upstairs quickly." We do as we're told, and as we're exiting the cellar, we are caught red-handed by the landlord of the pub, who asks us what we were doing in the cellar. We explain we just wanted to see what was down there, but the lady told us to go back upstairs. He looked a little confused by this and asked, "What lady?" before venturing down into the cellar himself. A few minutes passed, and when he came back, he told us there was nobody down there and to stop messing around. At which point we left the building to go and do other things. The thing I remember is the lady was dressed in an old-timey maid's outfit that you would see in a British Victorian period drama. I also remember she didn't feel threatening or scary, but rather kind and gentle. I messaged my friend about this a few weeks ago, 26 years later, and he remembered it clearly. I have heard several people talk about a maid or servant who was pushed down or fell down the cellar stairs and broke her neck. So, in conclusion, it was either the ghost of a Victorian servant or the landlord was doing kinky stuff with someone in the cellar, and we arrived at an inconvenient time.
I don't believe in ghosts or paranormal connections and shit, but this one really baffles me to this day. Happened a couple of years back, and I still can't forget it. Warning, story is kind of a downer. Also, sorry that it's long, but this is about as condensed as I could get it. Most of my friends have had trouble with substance abuse throughout their lives. Just the crowd I hung around with, I guess. Around the time of this story, one of my closest friends was clean off H for the longest they had ever been. A couple of months, but still fantastic progress for him, and things were looking good. We were hanging out one day, and he gave me some great news. Since middle school, he and his mom had been fighting for a medical malpractice lawsuit that happened to him when he was younger, and they won. He got something like 10 to 15K out of the deal. So most of what we talked about that day was just how he was going to buy his mom something nice and how he was going to use that money to finally go to college. I honestly hadn't seen him that happy in years, and it was great. A day or two later, I was sleeping like normal when all of a sudden I woke up at around 1 in the morning. I felt great. In fact, I felt absolutely euphoric. I felt like I was laying in the sun on the most beautiful summer's day in a puddle of 1,000 puppies. And that was just the first second. The next second was that X 1,000, and the next second that X 1,000 as well. Within moments, however, I went from, "This is pretty nice," to, "Oh shit, something is seriously wrong," before blacking out. All of a sudden, I was walking down the stairs to my friend's basement. It was absolutely destroyed with shit thrown everywhere and empty bottles and syringes laying around. He was sitting there waiting for me on the couch with tears in his eyes. He just kept repeating that he was sorry and that he didn't want to hurt anyone. He said the money didn't last him long and he's back to being his broke-ass self, that he was sorry for bringing me there and that he just needed to say goodbye to someone, before finally saying goodbye to me and everything fading out in another wave of euphoria. Me being logical to a fault and pretty straightforward, I woke up the next morning thinking, damn, what a weird dream, but not much else of it. Wrote it down in a dream journal I was doing at the time, and completely forgot about it. Ended up going to work and class like normal. Then a couple hours later, my friend's mom called. She called me to break the news that my friend had passed away that night. Overdose. It wasn't until a couple of months later when another friend of mine, also ex-addict, was trying to console me by telling me how he went out with no pain and how it was probably the best way to go when things started to get really weird. He started to explain to me what an overdose actually feels like, the overwhelming euphoria, and how it's impossible to explain to someone who's never experienced it before, i.e., me. It was then that what he was describing started to sound really familiar. And I went to my phone, opened my dream journal, and started reading the entry from a couple months back to him out loud. He pretty much said, "Yeah, exactly that. Where'd you get that story?" And told him the whole thing. Both of us were at a loss for words, and I still am. As I said, I don't believe in this stuff, and if someone told me this story, I would say they were high as fuck. But it's a memory that I will never forget.